Hello, family partnership families. Here we are again with our parent workshops, and I'm here to introduce you to Lotus Stewart. And I just want to tell you how I stumbled upon her curriculum. I'm going to make an admission here, confession. I don't love the glitter and the paint and the mess of art. So I always struggle when I add an art class for my kids because I lean more towards art history because it's not as messy. So I was looking for a really good art history program for my kids, which are basically every age range. And I stumbled upon this Raphael course that Art History Kids did. And I was so impressed. I reached out to her and I said, hey, will you come talk to our families? And she agreed. So here we are with Lotus Art History Kids, and she's going to share about her curriculum. Welcome, Lotus.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so excited to be here today, and I'm so excited to see all of you, and I'm happy to answer your questions. If you're here live and you have questions, just pop them into the chat, and if I don't see them while I'm talking, I have slides that I'm going to switch to in a second. If I don't see them while I'm talking, I'll be happy to stay on at the end and answer all of your questions. And if you're watching this on the replay later, because I know you guys post these up as replays, feel free to send me an email if you have a question after the fact. So with that, let me share my screen. And I will do that. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see my slides here. Today we're going to talk about how to inspire creativity in your homeschool. And just as a little introduction, my name is Lotus. I am a homeschool mom. I have two kids. We've homeschooled since the very beginning. They are now 12 and 14. This year has been very interesting, transitioning into high school homeschool. So it's a whole nother world now, but we've homeschooled since the very beginning, so for a long time. And I started Art History Kids when my kids were really, really young. I got this idea because I was looking for art history curriculum and something that was fun, that kids could learn about the artists, but also do their own art. And I couldn't find exactly what I wanted, so I just kind of started to create it. So I wanted to just start by thanking you for being here today. I know that everybody is so busy. Homeschoolers are especially busy, so I do appreciate that you're here with me, and I'm so excited to share some tips for making your homeschool a little bit more creative. And I wanted to start with this Picasso quote. I just love this quote. He says, "Every child is an artist. The problem is how to remain an artist once we grow up." And so I think that's just it. Kids we see that from the youngest age, they're drawn to creativity. They just seem to have it in everything they do, whether it's like mealtime or getting dressed, they're like creative in everything they're doing. And then it kind of tends to evaporate little by little as they get older. So it's our job really to nurture that as much as we can, because it is so important, because art really is more than an elective. It's an outlet we all need. It's self-expression, it's a form of communication. It's so powerful for all these different reasons. And it's not really about artistic talent or proficiency. I think that a lot of times we kind of think about, oh, well, my kids aren't going to be artists when they grow up, so maybe we shouldn't focus on this kind of subject. But it's so important for so many reasons, and it helps all of these other subjects too. And homeschooling with art history isn't maybe as tricky or as time consuming, or you don't have to have the background that you think that you might. I think a lot of people hear about art history and they think, oh, I never took art history, I probably couldn't do that. But it's so easy, and there are so many great opportunities for us, and opportunities for us to learn right alongside our kids too. So I hear that all the time, that moms are like, I'm having so much fun learning just right alongside my kids because I never got to learn this when I was in school. So the Art History Kids mission is pretty simple. Introduce kids to great art, invite them to formulate their own ideas, and encourage them to tap into their individual and innate creativity. So everything starts with art history. So it's always we start with looking at an artist, looking at a certain painting or sculpture, and that's the foundation for what we're learning. And then it goes into conversation, and open-ended conversation, and child-led conversation, so that we're inviting the kids to really think critically about this art and dive in and see things in it. And then they take those ideas and transform them into their own project. So there are no tutorials or step-by-step demonstrations in any of our programs. everything is open-ended, which is great for creativity. That's how kids get to do this trial and error, find out what works, what doesn't work, express themselves creatively. And in this way, the art is a lot less messy than some of those craft-like, the glitter and the pom-poms and the feathers and cutting a million pieces of paper. It's not typically that messy. It's, maybe a box of pastels and watercolor pencils, or just something that's pretty easy to put away at the end. It's not going to be this crazy craft mess nightmare that maybe has turned you off from art in the past. And I just love this quote. Here, I'm going to move my screen so I can read this all. I love this quote. Research indicates that a child who is exposed to the arts acquires a special ability to think creatively, be original, discover, innovate, and create intellectual property, key attributes for individual success and social prosperity in the 21st century. So it's not just about becoming an artist at the end of the day. It's about being able to innovate, being able to think, all of these things that we will all need to do no matter what our job is. So that all sounds great, but you're thinking, how do I do this? How do I bring this into my homeschool? So today I have 5 things that you can do really quickly and easily that will just kind of transform and shift and help you to start to add more creativity into your homeschool if it's not something that you've been incorporating in the past. So we're going to talk about intention, finding the reason why you want to add art to your homeschool. And this will be different for everybody. And it's so helpful because it directs what you will study with your kids. Then we'll talk about an art space. We'll talk about finding the time. I think this is the one that most homeschoolers struggle with, is we have so many other subjects. How do we find the time for art? How the open-ended art approach is unique, and then customizing it to fit the needs of your family. So let's dive right into the first one, setting a meaningful intention. So art has been an essential part of countless of civilizations dating back to prehistoric times. So it's really important for us to kind of realize that art is fundamental to our humanity. It's not just like a decorative kind of frivolous extra add-on that we can add if we want to. It's really, really important. Even, if you find a small bit of time here and there for art, it is really important for kids to be able to connect to this. But it's important also to connect to it in a way that's meaningful for them and for you. So this exercise is really fun and quick. So you just grab some Post-it notes, some markers, and invite your kids to start brainstorming all of the reasons why you want to explore art, why they want to explore art. Put every idea on a new Post-it note, and at the end, you'll have all these ideas. And then it's fun to also keep digging, going deeper, and asking why again. So you get to something maybe a little bit more meaningful than your first idea, and you have something really substantial that you can hang on to as your reason for doing art. And then you can choose your top reason, post it on your calendar, and return to this exercise after a while, because our reasons will change over time. And that's wonderful. We can approach art for different reasons in different seasons as our kids grow, different things like that. But when you post this on your calendar, it's such a powerful reminder, the reason why you're doing art. And if you tend to kind of mean to do art, but then you kind of skip it when it comes time, this will really remind you of the intention and help to make you a lot more consistent with approaching your art activities with your kids. And I love this exercise too. Just take a moment to kind of imagine what it would feel like to include art with intention. And what I mean by that is not just doing art like to check it off, to, we need to do art, check it off, or we do something kind of like read a book or do one thing just to get it done with, but to actually go back to the reason why your kids want to add art or why you want to add art, and actually kind of direct your learning toward that end goal. And then the amazing ripple effect that it will produce that goes way beyond art time. Like we talked about before, these benefits show up all over the place. So the benefits of exploring art and inspiring creativity don't end with the art lesson. They will quickly become an extension of your lifestyle, and the amazing influence of art appreciation will impact so many other aspects of your daily life. So you'll see things like your kids are becoming more observant, like not just for art class, but when you're out driving around, they'll start noticing things, or Somebody recently said their 8-year-old was on a Zoom call with their grandparents, and they said, the art behind you looks like a Matisse. Like they just start noticing these amazing things. They become more curious. You see creative problem solving, even with other subjects like math and science. Or you just have these amazing conversations that pop up during art studies, but other times too. So this is important because when we can begin with the end in mind, we can focus on the reasons why we're making art, and we can let that direct the kind of art we do, the kind of artists who we study, the kind of projects we invite our kids to try out, all kinds of things like that. And we're focusing on what's important to our kids, so that will naturally engage them more than just kind of, using a textbook and going through things that maybe they're not so interested in. So you can do this, like if your homeschool is focusing on a certain period of time, you can tie that in. You can do all these creative things with your learning to make these amazing connections as well. And the clarity that you get with this exercise will just help you to focus on what's meaningful. And when you're doing this post-it exercise too, and trying to get to your intention, don't just think academically. I think that that's kind of where our minds typically go. But this exercise should be equal parts head and heart. So if you're coming up with some reasons that aren't necessarily academic, that's totally fine. Those other reasons are extremely valuable, so keep them on the list. So this is a great opportunity, this casting a vision exercise and setting an intention, just to kind of see the end in mind and let that direct your art studies, and then make it so much more meaningful when you do have that purpose behind what you're studying. So then the second thing is creating an inspiring art space. And I have some lists. These are affiliate links, and you don't need to use this link at all. You can find things that are on these lists in your local craft store, your art stores. But just to kind of have a really great art space for your kids is amazing. But I think what's more amazing than the actual art supplies is the space that you create for your kids, and giving them access to some art supplies that they can reach all the time. And I know that a lot of times parents like to keep art supplies put up or put away, but it's so important for kids to have access to at least something, and age appropriate. Of course, if your kids are really small, you're not going to leave out a whole bunch of crazy permanent markers and things like that. But whatever is age appropriate, even if it's a box of washable crayons and a stack of paper, just so that they have that access and they can go and grab those things and create when inspiration strikes, and then build that art area over time. So you can think about things like, what do you have available right now? Sometimes you don't even have to go out and buy anything to create a really inspiring art space for your kids. It's just a matter of kind of imagining how it could be displayed differently, how it could be organized differently. Maybe it's hard to access or hard to get to. Maybe it's in a room where you notice, I noticed at a certain point that my kids always tended to do art in this one part of this one room, and it wasn't where we kept the art supplies. So I was like, well, maybe we should move the art supplies there. That's where they like to create art, if it's possible, if it's feasible in your house. Like, where is your art stored? How could you make it more accessible? Easier for them to get to? How could you mix it up once in a while, adding a new supply, or just getting, if you notice that your kids love a certain kind of supply, like watercolors or something like that, you could get them really nice watercolor paper after a while, or just kind of start to level up, because those things do make a huge difference sometimes. Sometimes the student grade art supplies are great, but other times something, just adding one thing of a slightly higher quality makes a huge difference. And then just deciding when you'll add something new and making it easy for yourself, and avoiding that mess that we talked about at the beginning by doing just a couple things to prepare. If things are going to be messy, if you're using paints, or if your kids are younger, you can get a drop cloth, is a great thing to do. If you're doing art near the edges of a room, protect the walls. Use washable materials as much as possible. Planning just and leaving time for cleanup, or just having wipes ready, things like that can be such a time saver. And then prioritizing and choosing the right projects for your schedule and your kids' ages. So just not setting yourself up for success by, if you know you've got a busy day and you've got to do something else, right in a half hour, but you want to do some art, maybe it's a great day for color pencils or something that's not going to make a huge mess. So you can think about this, maybe jot some ideas down as we're talking. What one thing could you do to kind of re-infuse your art space with a little bit more fun, make it a little bit more inviting, get your kids excited about doing some art there. And then be brave and realize that, the messes can be minimized, they can be limited. It doesn't have to be a crazy art mess every time, but sometimes there will be a little bit of cleanup, but it's always so worth it to let your kids kind of explore their creativity this way. All right, so number 3, prioritizing art in your schedule. And I think this is the one that is the biggest challenge for homeschoolers, because there are so many other subjects to get to, and art just seems like always at the bottom of the list. But I love this Vincent van Gogh quote, and he said, "Great things are not done by impulse, but by a series of small things brought together." So I think it's so important to remember that while we may have these grand visions for wanting to do this big project and have all the books, ordered from the library and have all the right supplies and everything ready and have it 100% prepared, sometimes just doing a series of small things over time gives us this great result. And if we're always kind of delaying and waiting for the perfect opportunity and to have all of our ducks in a row before we get started, it just keeps on pushing that project further and further off in the distance. So never disregard the great impact of small things done one at a time. So really, even the busiest homeschoolers have an hour or two a month for art, and you don't need a lot more time than that to make a really impactful difference in your homeschool with art. So I think that it's just important to kind of remind ourselves that we do tend to always prioritize what we feel is important. And that's where that Post-it note exercise really comes in handy. If you have that on your schedule when you're set to do art and you see that intention and the reasons why you're doing art, it really does help you to kind of reframe whatever you're thinking. Oh, we haven't done enough math this week, or we need to get to that spelling thing or whatever, and just kind of reframe that and say to yourself, oh, we chose to do this for these reasons, and it is really important. So we will definitely stick to our plan to do art today. And then look at your schedule and see what works. And it's so flexible with art. So it doesn't have to be something you do every week or, on a certain schedule. You can kind of choose for yourself what works for you best in different seasons. So if you have kids who are in sports or dance or things that kind of get busier at different seasons, you can change your schedule too. But even if you do things, once a week, a little bit longer time every other week, or even a big chunk of time once a month, that all works really well. The most important thing is just to be consistent and just to kind of feel excited about when you are going to do art. And then that will keep you on track with looking forward to it. So I have another quote that I love, and this is something that could also be helpful to kind of like write this out or print it out and post it up somewhere that you'll see it and it'll remind you. Children need art and stories and poems and music as much as they need love and food and fresh air and play. So I think that that's so true, and it's easy to forget, but it's so important to remind ourselves. And then just kind of put it on your schedule, decide what will work for you, if it's going to be every week, a smaller period of time, a longer period of time every other week or once a month, and actually put it on your schedule and look forward to it and get excited because it's going to be so much fun. So making it happen is as simple as just remembering your why with that Post-it exercise. You can set a timer on your phone if that helps you to remember. You can include it in your morning basket, or if you do like a circle time in the morning. It could even be, something as simple as just looking at a storybook during morning time, having postcards with different art on them to talk about. So these simple things can be added into things you're probably already doing in your homeschool. Doing a loop schedule, if you can't get to something all the time, but you're kind of rotating a few different subjects that you do occasionally, that can work well. Doing a 10-minute art break. I love this for in between, in between subjects that require a lot of thinking. And it's good to kind of take a break and use our brains in a different way between those subjects. Or if you're on the go, if you're waiting, if one sibling is waiting for another one to do a class somewhere and they're just hanging out, bring a sketch pad, bring some art supplies, make that into art time while they're waiting. Attach it to something you do consistently. While you make lunch or dinner, this is one of my favorites. So you're kind of already pretty much right next to the kitchen table. Most times if you're in the kitchen cooking, your kids can be there doing art. You can be talking back and forth. It's such a fun way to use time that sometimes doesn't get used for anything. And now it can be for art. Or doing art on the weekend. So sometimes we forget as homeschoolers, we want to do all of our school during the week, but the weekend is a great time to do art projects, or just once a month kind of art camp style. If you have a really super busy schedule, but you want to make time for art, just block out a morning or an afternoon once a month and just dive deep into something. And it can be a really, really fun and memorable experience that way too. So if you're taking notes, this would be a good time just to kind of think about maybe what would work best for your family right now with your schedule. Which one would you be able to kind of start to incorporate? And if you've tried to get to art in the past, but found it really hard to fit into your schedule, you just need to get creative and find a sustainable way to make it work. And don't be afraid to change it up as needed. You can change your schedule, change the frequency, all of that. It's up to you. Just to remember that it's too important to skip. And if you don't have a background in art, you can still do this. So you can model curiosity, find out things alongside with your kids, enjoy the experience of learning together. And I love this idea that I do this with my kids all the time. They know more than I do about so many subjects. And I'm just sitting there learning right alongside them because I know nothing about that. And it's fun for us to learn and for them to see that, oh, when I get to be 18 years old, I'm not going to know everything. My mom is much older than that and she's still learning. So it just shows them you're going to be learning your whole life. And that's a great thing to show them. So just keep it simple. Use Art History Kids resources. In addition to the paid programs we have, there's a blog with so many free resources. So that would be a great starting point as well. And just to celebrate each art exploration that you do, especially if you haven't been doing them, really pat yourself on the back when you get to art time, because it is a big accomplishment and it definitely deserves to be celebrated. So remember, it's your schedule. As homeschoolers, I think that sometimes we forget, we are the ones who get to design the curriculum and design the schedule and all these things. So it is really only limited by our own creativity, what we can do with our time. All right, so making the most of open-ended art. I have another quote. It's from Helen Frankenthaler. This is her. She's an amazing abstract expressionist artist. She came up with this soak stain technique where she would pour the paint onto her canvas that you can see it's lying on the floor. And of course, doing art this way, you can imagine that many times the art probably didn't turn out the way that she had imagined it. And she said, I'd rather risk an ugly surprise than rely on things I know I can do. And I just love this quote because she's telling us she could take the easy way and she could do things that she knew would end up looking good, but she would never get that kind of magic in her art with that method. And this method, while she might get a lot of ugly surprises along the way, when it does work, it's so worthwhile. So it's a good kind of starting point to talk about, how we can approach open-ended art with our kids, especially if they've been doing tutorials or step-by-step demonstration type art things. These things can provide the illusion of creativity, but really your kids are just following instructions, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong. And if your kids love this way of doing art, I'm not saying to not do it. But the thing is that this doesn't really allow them to use their full potential creatively. So it's nice to mix in some open-ended art, even if they do love tutorials. So they can be useful for learning techniques and things like that, but they don't really allow our kids to practice a growth mindset, to develop these critical thinking skills, and to develop their own style in their art. So they're not really making art that's meaningful for them with tutorials. They're guaranteed a great end result, which I think is one of the attractive things about it. They know that at the end of the project, it's going to look really, really good. But it's not going to be truly theirs. They didn't think of it. They didn't come up with it. They didn't make up the decisions that went into it. And when they do open-ended art, it may not always work out the way they want it to, but like Helen Frankenthaler said, it's worth risking that ugly surprise to kind of come to your own art, to have this meaningful self-expression in their art when they do. So to reframe this, sometimes it can be hard for kids, especially kids with perfectionist tendencies who really want their art to look good, or good by what the standards they have in their mind that they think are good. So it's important that we kind of set up a different way of approaching it before we just dive into open-ended art, if it's something new for your kids. If they're little and they're already doing this, then you're good to go. You don't have to do any of this kind of stuff because they're already approaching their art this way. But just to approach it like it's a fun experiment, like it's playful. We're just going to see what happens. And it doesn't really matter what the art looks like at the end. It's more about the process that we go through in creating the art. So we can reinforce the importance of a growth mindset. We can, tell them that when we face challenges, that's when we really learn. So celebrate the effort that you see your kids putting into the art instead of the end result. And I think this can be a really hard thing because we're so used to kind of praising the end result, but sometimes it's really valuable to kind of take a step back and notice what kind of effort they're putting into it, and then observe that out loud for them. So say, I saw that you were really thinking about which color to choose there, or whatever you happen to see them putting effort into, kind of just comment on the effort more than, oh, that looks really good. So you could also share stories with your kids if you think that your kids would respond to this. So some kids, this might really help, and some kids it might not. So your kids and whether or not it would. But I think sometimes it just helps kids. I know for my daughter especially, for her to know that somebody else also struggled with this, especially if it was a famous artist who struggled with it. It can really be validating, like they're not alone. They're not the only one who feels this way. So there are so many stories of famous artists who were frustrated by their art. You can tell your kids, and this is true, that Vincent van Gogh thought The Starry Night was a failure. He wrote, all in all, the only things I consider a little good in it are the wheat field, the mountain, and the orchard, the olive trees with the blue hills. And to me, the rest says nothing. So he did not like the sky. He thought the stars were too big. All these things that we love about this painting, he thought they were bad. So that's an amazing thing to learn about Van Gogh. In 1908, Monet destroyed 15 major works just before an exhibition. So not to encourage your kids to do violent things to their art or anything, but just to tell them, Monet was so frustrated, he would rip them up to shreds or even put his foot through them if he was unhappy with his work. He once threw his easel and paint box into the river in a fit of temper. So he was super frustrated by works that we would probably look at today and say, wow, that's a masterpiece. But to him, it wasn't what he had in his mind, and it frustrated him. And Matisse famously said, "It has bothered me all my life that I do not paint like everybody else." And that's what we love about Matisse, that he didn't paint like everybody else, but it bothered him all his life. So just interesting to hear that. But he also said creativity takes courage. And I think that's the main thing with open-ended art, just to kind of realize that and know that, your kids are being really courageous when they dive into these open-ended projects and they don't know if it's going to turn out, and just kind of support them in that journey. So be courageous, move away from the safety of kits and demonstration-based art activities, even if it's once in a while. Not all the time. If they love kits and demonstration things, that's fine. But just once in a while, say, let's do something open-ended. And before you offer a prompt, ask your kids if they have any ideas they'd like to explore. Because a lot of times they do, but they don't necessarily come out with them because they think, oh, we're going to do this project. But if you have a project in mind and you say, we've been studying this artist, what do you think would be fun to do? I bet a lot of times they would have their own idea first. So using their ideas, approaching open-ended art, this promotes creativity, which is what we're after with our art explorations. So it's super valuable. All right, so the last one here is adapting art to different ages and skill levels. And this is so much fun because I think as homeschoolers, a lot of us have kids at different ages, and some things, like math, they each have to work at their own level. But when we can combine things together, it's so much fun. It's so great to do that. So remember that this is your homeschooling. You set the tone and the pace. Open-ended art is easily adaptable for kids of all ages, from preschool all the way through high school. So you can give yourself permission to feel successful, even if you didn't do everything. So if you see, in some curriculum, in ours or another art curriculum, and you see like all the things you should do, but you're like, well, my kids are, this age group, and so only these 3 things out of 10 will really work for us. That is fine. Celebrate that, do that. And don't feel like you didn't do the 7 things. Feel like, wow, yeah, we did the 3 things. So just to kind of change your perspective of you're making it work for your kids and your homeschool, and don't worry about the rest. So if your kids are really little, toddlers, pre-K, you can focus on just play and exploration, nothing beyond that. They don't need to even hear about the dates or whatever. That's not important right now. Just, looking at art together, playing, experimenting, introducing them to different art supplies, giving them free rein to just kind of explore. And then in early elementary, you can kind of start to introduce a few key ideas, meet the artists as people. So there's so many connections that kids can relate to about these artists. So whether it's like Andy Warhol loved cats, or different things, different fun personality quirks that we learned about these artists through storybooks or whatever, and kids can identify with them, not as like this famous person from history, but as like somebody who was creative, who also liked cats just like me. You can just walk aimlessly through museums, follow their lead, listen more than we talk. We can just ask our kids, what do you see there? What do you think the artist was trying to do? Open-ended questions and just see what they think. Kids are amazing. They're so insightful when it comes to art. And then in late elementary and middle school, you can kind of start to bring more learning in. You can bring in more historical context, connect with concepts with your other subjects. So if you're doing history things or whatever, you can kind of connect art with those subjects. And then more open-ended questions. And then in high school, it's really an amazing time to kind of go even deeper. So you can circle back to some artists, maybe who they were introduced to at a younger age, but maybe you couldn't share all of the crazy things about their life or all of the art pieces that maybe weren't appropriate when they were 5. And now you can go deeper. And these things can be kind of a bridge to some of these tricky conversations that are important to have when kids get older. So art is just such a flexible homeschool subject because it is so adaptable, especially open-ended art, because everyone's working at their own level already. And so working together with a wide age range really enhances the learning. And it's really interesting with art, it's kind of reverse from usual. So usually if we have a subject we can do all together, the younger kids are looking up to the older kids to learn. But with art, I find that it's the opposite. The older kids are looking at what the younger kids are doing and kind of in awe of like, oh, look at the freedom that they're bringing to that, or the expressiveness, or the things that the little kids are doing are teaching our older kids. So you can learn with confidence, know that it's your homeschool, you can adapt it to the kids in your homeschool, whatever ages they are, and make it really fun to do together. It's a really memorable activity to do together. So now you have all the information you need to do these great things to bring more creativity into your homeschool. You can set that intention. You can spruce up your art space, even if it's just kind of relocating it or doing something simple. You can find a time for arts, know that open-ended art is so valuable, and then adapt the plan to meet the needs of your kids. So if you would like any help with the planning, we have a couple of options at Art History Kids. So we have workshops. These are like a deep dive. They're a series of short videos with kind of a workbook that goes along with it, but they're just on one specific subject each. And we have 3 available right now. And then there's the modern art course. If you go to our website, you'll see it at the top. It's called Magnificent Modern Art. And this is a bigger art curriculum. So this it would probably take a whole year. Some families are going at a slower pace and using it for 2 years, it's up to you. So the pacing here is totally up to you. You can go quickly or slower. There are 10 lessons, there are 10 artists, and each artist represents a different movement in modern art history. So it's videos along with printable workbooks. And then these are the artists that we cover in that course. So all the way from Impressionism through minimalism. So 100 years of art. And then there's the studio membership. So this is an ongoing monthly membership where we study a new topic each month. And there's also a huge archive of past topics. So there's a community, there's all kinds of fun things in the membership that are really great too. And then these are the topics that we're exploring this year. So we're finishing Van Gogh right now. We're going to move into Dave the Potter next month, and then Mary Cassatt. And you can see we've got just a wide range of topics all throughout the year. And to finish up, I just love this quote from Maya Angelou. She said, "You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have." So just a great way to finish thinking about our homeschools and our creative approach there. So if anybody has questions here, I haven't even been looking in the chat, but I'll look over here too.
So I have a question. So I have looked at your Raphael course, and you explained there's like a pre-recorded lesson, and then there's some activities that you do afterwards and some questions that you give us. So the studio membership, is it set up the same way, or how would that look?
Yeah, so the studio is different because it's more of a live interactive way to do art. So with the studio, we have a different topic every month. So the new topic starts on the first Monday of the month. And that week you would get a guide that would have the art that we're going to look at that month with some conversation prompts to get the conversation started with your kids to dive in and start looking at the art together and talking about it, as well as all 4 of the projects. So we kind of try to do a different project every week, but some kids only do 1 project for the whole month. And some kids don't do any, they just come for the art appreciation. Like they don't even do the projects. But I just give 4 project ideas each month so that kids can choose however many they would like to do. And then in the second week, there's another pre-recorded video that is about the biography of that artist. So I do like a 10-minute video. I record it and then I post it into the membership the second week, and it just kind of shares the history of that artist, their life story. And then also in the second week, we have a live Zoom meetup where we talk through the art together. So if you got the guide in the first week and you didn't have a chance to talk to your kids about the art or like have a conversation about it, that's fine because we do it live in the second week. So I just put the art up, I ask questions, the kids type in the chat their responses, and we just kind of go through the art that way. Then in the third week, we connect the art to other subjects. So we'll say, this month we're doing this artist. How does that relate to science? How does that relate to history? Like we put it into context of these different areas of study. And then in the fourth week, we have another live Zoom where we look at all the art that kids have created that month. So it's kind of like an art show and tell, where there's like a slideshow with the art that the kids created, and we can all kind of celebrate everyone's, art and have I do a little Zoom trivia that's always really fun. And then we just look at who we're going to study the next month. So that's how that works.
Super helpful. Yeah. Thanks for explaining. Because I think the other courses are more self-guided, right?
Yes. And then the studio also has a community aspect too. So right now it's on Facebook. We're moving it either next month or in March. Like we're moving it very soon over to a different platform. So it's not going to be on Facebook anymore, because I know that a lot of homeschoolers don't use Facebook, or a lot of them are leaving Facebook. So it's going to be on our own separately hosted community platform, which is really cool. And it has all these fun features. So there's a community manager in there who is always, in there chatting. And yeah, there's a space where you can like ask questions or just connect with other people, talk about things. And so there's community support with the membership as well.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you. I was paying attention, but sometimes I distract myself, so I just take my camera off.
Oh, that's okay.
But I really love your enthusiasm for art and the structure that you've provided for homeschool families in particular to learn it. And it kind of addresses Katrina's issue, which is I don't want stuff in my house. I don't want that goop on my table. So they can go and maybe do it elsewhere for seminars or watch it at home. But the other thing is, my bachelor's is in music, and so for me, the arts, it's so sad to watch them kind of fade as not a priority. And people don't understand how it really releases a child. When you expand their mind and creativity, you've expanded their writing, you've expanded their reading, you've expanded their sense of self. And, I have lots of paintings that I tore up, but I was not a Monet, so I don't feel guilty. But anyway, I just appreciate your work, and I'm so happy that Katrina put this together and that we can know about it and get our kids involved.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I know exactly what you're saying about music too. My son he like is obsessed with music, like that's his whole life. And so it's hard too to find resources for that. And I've been able to over the years found several great ones, but they're not, it's, if you type in, geography or spelling, you get like inundated with hundreds. And then you type in art or music and it's like, so
And my only thing about music, my piece of unsolicited advice is go for excellent instruction. I mean, obviously you've got a lot of background knowledge and care for art. And so you're going to bring that to the table, and it's something that's important to you. So I can just sit here and see that you're going to be an excellent instructor because of your background knowledge and your passion and skill. And so the same is true for music. Get someone who's skilled and good.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend money on art or music, get someone who's really competent. And there are resources, like your sponsor. If Katrina was your sponsor teacher, for those who are watching, she will know ones that have different genres and, excellence. So,
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this curriculum for what Teresa said. You're excited about it. And sometimes I think exactly what you said. I don't know anything about art history. So how do I teach this to my kids? And I think that you've removed that stumbling block for all of us. So I just want to say thank you again for putting your passion into a curriculum we can all use and for coming to talk to us about it. I'm so thankful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And this was so much fun. And I'm so glad now. That's my main thing, is I want everyone to know, like, I think art history has this reputation for being kind of like stuffy and elitist, and it's so accessible and approachable and fun. And we can really, do this with our kids, whether or not we've ever had. I didn't have art history courses until college. I never had them growing up. And then I just fell in love with it, like as an adult, and I was so excited to bring it to my kids. So I'm excited that if, adults can learn alongside their kids, that's all the better. And it's so much fun. It's like a bonding experience, you get to learn together, and it's just really great.
It is. And I think that the great thing about art is you can use art to prompt a social studies experience, just like you said, or you can use art to create a writing language arts work sample. And so it can cross lots of different subject areas. And people might think, oh, art's not important. But yes, besides just being important, it can connect to so many different things that you're already doing with your family. So it just seamlessly flows. So thanks again for coming, for being here, for sharing. And I'm so excited to use this curriculum with my kids. I think that modern art's the next one we're going to hop on. So
I'm excited to hear what you think. I think that I just did that one last summer. I created the Magnificent Modern Art course last summer, and it was really fun to dive in and choose the artists. And so, I'm excited to hear what you think once you dive in.
Well, I'm just going to say one more thing. I mean, I could talk to you forever, Lotus, but I just had a baby, and I chose the Raphael course because I knew we weren't going to be doing a lot of homeschooling, but I didn't want my kids to do nothing. And so I bought the Raphael course thinking my kids can watch this. They can do it all by themselves. But just like you said, I'm sitting over there like, oh, this is so interesting. And so it was just a real lifesaver, but also it added to our lives in a time when I didn't have the space to add a lot more, but here you added it for me. So
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love hearing stuff like that. So thank you.
yeah, so if you're going to do nothing in your life, add art history and have some fun with it. That's the moral of the story.
Definitely.
Okay, well, all of you go have a wonderful afternoon and go check out art history, kids. And Lotus, thanks again for joining us and hanging out with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely a blast.
Okay, bye, you guys.
Bye.